Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our February 3rd council meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call.
Mr. Oja?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Dr. Hayes?
Here.
Mr. Gottstein?
Here.
Mr. Ball?
Here.
Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 20th. Any additions or corrections?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of January 20th, 2014.
Second.
Motion made by Dr. Hayes, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes. Approval manifest 2014-03 in the amount of $167,776.49. George, any questions?
I just got two, Jeremy. One of them, on this AP laser checking stock, I see it's on just about every department.
That's accounts payable check, George, when we buy a bulk
Okay.
amount, we divvy them up to the department.
That's fine, right? And the only other question I got is on page 5, I believe. Yeah, page 5, right up on the top, that's $6,100 for joint funding agreement for United States Geographical Survey. Is that,
That's the meter that's down, that's the,
Stream gauge.
the stream gauge, I'm sorry, I had a
Yep.
mental lapse.
The-
We have, down by the
Oh.
Sturgeon Dam, or the Sturgeon Bridge,
okay.
yeah. That's a
Fine,
quarterly
I didn't
payment.
even-
Yeah, we now are paying for the one that's below the hydro and the one by the Sturgeon River Bridge on US 2.
Sorry, Joe, I didn't even look to see what department it was.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's all I have, Jeremy.
Okay, Chris.
Nothing tonight?
Dr. Hayes.
No questions.
Lee.
I got a couple little ones here. Otis Elevator, do we have a problem with that? I see it says repair, outage.
We did have an outage on our elevator.
Well, I didn't think it was that long ago they had come in and inspected it.
This was due to a power outage, wasn't it? Or there's, yeah.
Oh, that throws everything kittywampus?
Can-
Okay.
It can, yeah.
The 7 ballistic vests for the police department, I don't have a problem with it, but what's the the warranty on it, or I should say the expiration date?
I think they expire in like 5 years.
5 years?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I also noticed, and I'm assuming it's just normal, but the premium adjustments for the Michigan Municipal League, all the different apartments for the year, the $4,300 more, is that just a normal increase?
That's,
Or did
workman's
something-
comp.
Yeah.
They estimate our workman's comp at the beginning of the year, and then they do an audit of the actual payroll numbers at the end of the year. Sometimes it results in a credit, and this year it resulted in us owing more money.
Oh, okay. It isn't because we had a lot of lost timers or anything like that, okay. And on page 2, under recreation, Otto's Timber Works, timber sale prep tree painting, $420. Now, that's coming out of the recreation department, so this timber sale, the money is gonna go into the
That has been the.
recreation department?
That has been the recommendations in the past, yes.
Okay. Now, is that for everything that was done? And I don't quite remember what the estimated value of that was.
Yeah, there's 3 different areas that
Yeah.
that he's looking at. And, Joe, do you remember what the total estimate was? I think it's up around 20,000, wasn't it, with the
That
3 areas?
I-
sounds about right, okay.
23 comes to mind, but
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up to be 100% on it, but it's somewhere right in there.
Okay, and the last thing I have then is on page 3, under Norway Fire Department, UP Security, 1 lock keyed, 2 locks rekeyed, so they're just all new locks, is that what that is? And they're all keyed the same?
I'd have to ask the question. I don't know the answer to that right off the top.
Oh, okay. It's only $78, but just curious more than anything.
Ray, that was for that one supply room? They changed the lock on the supply room door
Okay.
because they had some, people leave and
Oh, I
for
see.
security reasons to have it.
Okay, that's all I have.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. So I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion, we approve manifest 2014-03 in the amount of $167,776.49.
Support.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Dr. Hayes. Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Okay, under appointments and presentations this evening, we have 4 items before we get into communications. The first item is the Norway Volunteer Fire Chief. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As part of the agreement and protocol, when the volunteer employees, when they have a vote or they vote to, on their fire chief, they have decided to have a selection, a new fire chief for this coming up year. Dave Ball, actually Chuck Anderson has decided to step down. So they had a vote and Dave Ball has been voted back in as fire chief. It is the responsibility of the council to approve consent of that request. So that's what you have this evening for Dave Ball. And then Pat Siegel will remain as assistant fire chief.
Are there any questions? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we go along with the volunteer fire recommendation and reinstate David Ball as Norway volunteer fire chief.
Support.
Motion made by George, supported by Lee. Roll call.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Okay, next we have the appointment of Donna Hayes to the Downtown Development Authority. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Mayor mentioned, with the resignation of Bob Carlson at the past meeting, we had an open seat for DDA. We actually received 2 applications, one from Donna Hayes and the other from Barb Thorne. Next area, or the next appointment is Norway Area Planning Commission, and Ms. Thorne is also put in for that. I did talk to Barb about, when we have people that are willing to serve on committees, it's nice to approve as many of them as possible, because we tend to get open seats, and so I did ask her if she was okay with just going with the Planning Commission as opposed to both Planning Commission and the DDA. She still has a very strong interest in participating on the DDA, but she said that was fine. She understood exactly what I was asking, but it is the council's prerogative as to who they appoint, but our recommendation is to appoint Ms. Anna Hayes as a member of the DDA. And then her term would complete the expiring term, which comes up December 2018.
2016.
It expires in 2018.
Well, you said 16 on that.
On the sheet, it says 16.
Yeah. There must be a typo. It would be 16. That 18 must be a typo.
All right, are there any questions or comments? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that Donna Hayes be appointed to the DDA board to complete the open term expiring December 2016.
Support.
Motion made by Chris, supported by Lee. Roll call.
Mr. Ball?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Abstain.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Next, as Mr. Anderson mentioned, we have the Norway Area Planning Commission and to appoint Barb Thorne. Mr. Anderson.
Well, I don't know if there's any questions, but Ms. Thorne has also expressed interest in the Planning Commission. This has been an open seat for a few months, and we have not had any other applicants, but we're excited to have Barb put in for this appointment, so we're recommending her appointment to complete the open seat, term ending
2015.
2015. January of 2015.
Any questions or comments?
Make
If
a
not,
motion we appoint Barb Thorne to the Norway Area Plan Commission.
I'll support. Motion made by Dr. Hayes, supported by myself. Roll call.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yes. Mr. Oger, Jeremy, I got one question on Donna Hayes there for just to protect Doc and just to verify any questions. Doc, is she on your license or something, your wife? I mean, because of that DDA, you have to be involved.
Business owner or live in the district, I believe that's what it
She
is.
works in the office.
You can also
Yeah,
be an
yeah,
employee.
employee,
You could also be an
business owner.
employee of a business in the district.
Yeah.
So,
Employee, business
because she
owner.
works in the office, she
Okay,
qualifies.
I'm just
I
just
understand.
checking, just
Yes.
to make sure that some questions don't come up later or
Right.
we show favoritism here.
To qualify, as Lee said, you have to either live in the district, own a business in the district, or
Or-
be an employee of a business in the
Or
district.
employee, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you have to have interest in that employee, being an employee.
I didn't realize it was employee.
Next this evening, we have Mike Peters from WPPI here to give a presentation to the council. So if you'd like to come up to the podium.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Members of the council, appreciate the opportunity to address you and give you an update on WPPI activities. Quite frankly, I'd rather answer questions, so if at any time you have specific questions that you'd like to raise, please do so. We can discuss those at that time. I have handed out a copy of the presentation, but what I really wanted to focus on starts on page 34 of that presentation. If we have time, I can go back and cover some of the earlier material, but I wanted to focus a little bit of my time on where technology is taking municipal utilities and the response that WPPI has put together over the last couple of years that will allow our members to be responsive to what's happening in the industry and customer expectations. How many here have a cell phone? You all have cell phones. How many get a paper bill versus an online bill? Probably a little bit of both. Some get a paper, some get online bill. You can also look up your usage online. You can find out how many minutes you've got left. You can look at the last 6 months of your bill. You can exchange information with the cell phone provider. You can send emails, get responses back to that system. You have a lot of flexibility with that type of a system. And electric utilities are no different today. And utilities now have the ability to have a web portal presence with their customers so that customers can get access to information. They can look at their bills online. They can pay their bills online. They can compare their usage over the last, this month compared to this time last year, the same month, to see if, their usage has changed. All of this is available today, but you have to have the technology in place to really make it valuable to customers. And there's really four pieces actually, of technology that you need in order to make this type of information available to customers, as well as bring a host of value to the utility itself, absent what customers need. This level of information that we're able to get now through AMI, the automated metering infrastructure, and the customer information systems, the billing systems and software systems, that coupled with what's called a meter data management system allows the utility to get data that is now in a format that can be used for a lot of things just for utility operations. And that's another piece of this as well that I'll talk about a little bit. Let's go back to the customer side. Customers today, and it's not so much me necessarily or individuals our age, but younger generation, they expect to be able to do a lot of things either on their smartphone or online, and they're pushing utilities to go in the same direction. So with the automated metering technology that's available today, that's a meters base that actually can provide two-way communications. You can get meter reading information, and not only once a month meter reading information, but you can get a read every 15 minutes. And the reason that's valuable from the utilities perspective is you can use that for planning purposes, power supply and distribution planning as well. So you can get a lot of data from that customer. You can also send information to that meter. If you change your rates and you have different types of rates available, you can send information to that meter as well. You can get outage information from those types of meters. So if that customer's service goes offline, they don't even have to pick up a phone to call you. You automatically get information from that meter that says, I've gone offline, I'm out of power. And as we all know, timely information of outages is really important to a utilities operation. This information can also be fed into maps so that you can get a very good picture almost automatically of what's happening on your system through this type of metering technology. That's a benefit to the utility beyond just the benefit that it brings to the customer as well. Taking it a next step, so if you have the AMI technology out in the field and it's operating, you get those operational benefits. If you tie that into your customer information software, whether it's Northstar or one of the other software packages that are available, you now have the information that you need to generate bills and more accurately than what you currently had available, more timely, more efficient from a cost standpoint. A lot of the you don't have to worry about taking the meter data and entering all that into a system by hand. It literally comes from the meter into your system, and you can generate bills and information from that. You take that to the next step and tie that with our meter data management system, you really open up the ability to do a lot of things with that data, the billing information, tying that to online technology with the web portal. You can have different billing system or different types of rates for different types of customers much more efficiently than what a utility can do today. You can generate trouble tickets. Again, from an outage standpoint, you can actually have that information generate a work order or a ticket to take a look at that, what's causing that outage. Again, online or immediate response to the utility when you have an outage. Remote disconnects is another benefit that it brings to the utility and quite frankly to the customers as well. It's a lot less expensive if you do have to disconnect service for non-payment or even a move out. You can do that remotely with this type of technology as opposed to sending out a crew and doing the disconnects that way. You can also authorize service remotely as well. So there's a lot of benefits to the utility that come about because of this newer type of technology. From a power supply and a utility design perspective, this chart that's in your packet, this is one of our member utilities that is now has fully deployed AMI technology, has fully integrated that information with the meter data management system and their billing system, and so we're now able to generate a profile of that utility's usage for every one of their customer classes. As you can see on the right side of the page, that's each one of their customer classes they have, and then you can go back and you can see how much that particular customer class is contributing to the utility's costs. This is their power supply profile for that week. You can see very clearly the days of the week and the weekends, the troughs, the valleys, those are the weekends, and then the days of the week across that 4-week period. This information is invaluable when you're doing a rate case. If you're wanting to adjust your rates, one of the things that a utility has to understand is who's causing the costs to be incurred by the utility. Today, we make educated guesses based on mathematical formulas and profiles. With this level of data, we can tell you specifically which customer class is causing whatever costs you are incurring, whether it's a power supply bill, and obviously these peaks mean a lot from a power supply perspective, whether on your distribution utility system, are there particular circuits that have a higher usage? Are there a particular customer class that has a higher percentage of usage? Obviously, those are the classes that should be paying a little bit more of the distribution costs. As I said, today we do a lot of this with mathematical formulas and information that we have on what standard utility practice is. It also takes 3 or 4 days to pull the data together and take a look at it and analyze it. With this type of a system, we can do the same thing in the matter of hours. We literally can queue the system, generate the reports and the data to show specifically which customer classes are driving your costs for your utility system. And as I said, all of this comes about when you integrate your AMI system with your the CIS system and the meter data management system. That on page 35 is more or less lays out the three components. That meter data management software package, it costs WPPI about $2 million. And we have 2 full-time employees in the office that maintain that system and generate the reports, pull the data, make sure that the systems between the AMI system and the customer billing systems are communicating appropriately. As you can imagine with any large software package, every month there's probably some updates that happen to that package. Plus, if there's errors, they have to go back in and figure out what the error was. Is it a data entry error? Was it, did a meter fail and it didn't pick up the data and get it into the system? So we have staff that's trained and able to take care of those problems. There's not a single member of WPPI that individually would invest $2 million in that system. It makes no sense for a utility of our members' size. But through WPPI, we've made that investment, and that system is available to our members to take advantage of it when they're ready to. When we started looking at this process about 4 or 5 years ago, we recognized that our members literally ran the gamut from those that had already installed AMR. That's an automated meter reading technology that you can get a once-a-month meter read, more or less, all the way to systems that still had analog meters and read them and wrote down the readings by hand. And we had 51 member utilities of WPPI, and we had members on all sides of that spectrum. And so our intent was to put a system in place, a technology solution that would accommodate all 51 members when those members were ready to make their incremental next steps. Quite frankly, if we had all 51 of our members on day one say we're ready to make that transition, we wouldn't have been able to handle it. We've been typically doing anywhere from 4 or 5 of these transitions a year, and for us that's a perfect number. I mean, that takes 8 to 10 years for us to get all 51 members into that newer technology. It also allows the local municipals to make the decision, when is it in your best interest to do that? So, as I said, some of our members that had just invested in AMR technology, they went from an analog meter to a newer digital meter, and they may have just done that in the past year or two. It doesn't make sense for them to immediately junk that type of a metering technology and go buy a new system. But over 8 to 10 years, they easily would wring the value out of that system and be prepared to move on to the next system at that time. So we put in place a technology solution that allowed our members to move when they were ready to move and allowed us to bring them into the system. Right now, we've got 6 that are fully integrated. We have about, I believe, 4, if not 5, that are going this year and that are installing the AMI systems. They already either have the CIS, that's the customer billing system, the software system in place, and they're switching out their meters to the newer AMI technology, and then we do the integration with the MDM system. And as I said, we have 4 or 5 that is on the path of getting that done this year, and then we'll be looking for, obviously, the rest of our members to slowly, over time, roll into that system. One of the initiatives we're doing this year is we're reviewing the different web portals, and that's the interface between all of this data that right now, I mean, if you were to send this to a customer, that's pretty meaningless to any customer, even if a customer within one of these rate classes. But with the web portal and this type of a system, you can drill down and provide information that's beneficial to a customer. As I said earlier, you can look online, take a look at your usage. You can, see how your usage might compare to your peer group, whether it's, similar sized houses or all the residential customers in your billing area. You could actually do some things that show customers my usage was 800 kilowatt hours. The average for residential customers in Norway was 650 kilowatt hours. So you can have that type of information available to customers. So this year our mission is to review all the various web portals, and there are several out there, and select a web portal vendor that we would then tie into all of the system, and that would be in the budget for next year. Again, this is something that WPPI would take the lead on. We have a committee made up of a number of our member utilities, the Information Technology Advisory Group. And they meet, and this year they'll probably meet 3, 4, 5 times as necessary to review all the various web portals. There's a number of systems out there that interface that are already in place for utilities. We'll take a look at those, see how they integrate with our existing systems, and then make a selection near the end of the year so that we're able to roll at least the 6 that we currently have, move them that direction, and continue to add members as we move forward. So that's an initiative that's been going on at WPPI for, as I said, it lasted about 4 or 5 years. And we really started aggressively looking at adding new members or transferring members into the AMI system about 2 years ago. So we're right at the beginning of that 10-year window that we looked at. I know that Norway is, considering where you're taking your metering options. I can tell you that every one of our systems that have gone down that path, and some of them are significantly smaller than Norway, have had absolutely no regrets. The information they've been able to get has been a benefit just to the utility itself, irrespective of the benefits that they see ultimately will come to their customers. But they have benefited greatly from the information, not only from operating their utility, but also getting the data about what their utility is actually doing from the standpoint of usage, whether it's peak demand in the summer or average kilowatt hour usage among classes, et cetera. So it's been a good value for our members that have gone down that path. Any questions on where we're at with technology?
We can look at an individual customer then and see what his usage is and when it is.
Yeah, the benefit that we've seen in some of these customers, you'll get a phone call from a customer complaining about how my bill in July was, significantly higher than I thought. Your customer service person can go online. They, right there at their desk, they can pull up that customer's usage. They can look at every day of that customer's usage over the last whatever period you pick, whether it's just this month or the last 6 months, or once you have enough years of data in the system, I can look at your usage for July of 2014 and compare that to your usage of July of 2013. And then you can actually have conversations with customers. I see that your usage last year at this time on days that were similar in temperature, was significantly less than it was this year. Was there anything that happened that, month of July that may have caused your usage to go up? They've had these conversations with customers, and lo and behold, customers start to say, yeah, I guess there was, we put in a new swimming pool, I forgot. Or I did something, that they go to that explains perhaps why their usage is that much higher. So yes, your customer service people will have access to that data in a usable format so that they can have that conversation with customers. And customers will be able to go online and look at it as well.
One anecdotal story is that we've heard from a community was that resident or customer called. They were same thing. My power this month was much higher, and they said, "Well, you spiked on this Friday."
Yeah.
And the guy said, "Oh yeah, that was out in a garage welding." That was
Yeah.
in the conversation. So I mean,
Right,
that's
exactly.
It's just able to down his head for what happened.
So what's the cost to the city of Norway for switching to the system, and are we in position to do that?
The two best people to give you that information would be Joe and Ray. I don't have the details of what Norway, where they're at today, what the cost would be, but I'm sure they're more knowledgeable of that than I would ever be.
Joe, what's it been, about 6 years that we changed all our metering over?
A little bit more than that. It's almost 8 now.
8?
Yeah, I bought all those meters used from Florida and had them redone. And we're at the point now with our current handheld system, the way that we read remotely, that they're not supporting that anymore. And in order to move into a new handheld system, we wouldn't want to spend that money there, knowing that this is kind of the direction that we're looking at going, and move in this direction. As far as Dr. Hayes' questions about cost, I don't have all of them pulled together yet, but I'm having a meeting tomorrow to get those costs, and I'll have, by the next council meeting, be able to answer that a little more accurately. We're going to do it, the way I'm looking at it, is a step approach, a little bit at a time, so it's more affordable. But it's a very good system, what they're proposing,
No.
and what's out there for our customers.
I see, Joe, just looking at page 35 here, you got customer billing. And this is something just 2 weeks ago, I asked, Ray on this new employee, how much of this are you gonna take out of the office and be sending out here?
Well, there's not a lot of billing that is going to actually, from a utility billing standpoint, the only thing that would change is that you would not print the bills here, you wouldn't stuff the envelopes here, you would farm all that piece of it out. As far as working with the customers, doing collections and all the things that they currently do, that would stay. What really helps here is you have immediate information when a customer has a question. You don't have to call one of my linemen and have them come over, get a work order, go out to the field, get a read, come back. You're eliminating truck travel, personnel that way. So
That's a
linemen
change.
continue to build lines where this should do, and we can get the information.
That's a change in software package. It's not really a workflow change.
Well, how does that work in with the rest of our software for the rest of the utility billing? Because this is for electric. You still got the rest of the utilities that are all going to be on one bill.
Mary and I have both sat in seminars on the North Star, and it will adapt to all the things that we do.
We'd still just have one billing system.
It'd be just one billing
It would
system.
accommodate everything we have.
Would it work with the BSNA that we have now, or would we be changing that?
From utility billing, we would be changing, we would get rid of the BSNA and convert it over to the North Star, but just on the utility billing.
Well, will the BSNA that we still have communicate with the North Star if we needed it to, or will they not need to?
I believe so. It would need to from a general ledger standpoint, and I believe it does. I think they've got other customers, if I'm not mistaken, that are doing that combination.
The city of Gladstone is an
I
example.
think so.
They use the North Star billing software, and they use BSNA as their general ledger, and they communicate just fine. That was a concern a year and a half, 2 years ago, but that's all been worked out now.
Any other questions? Or
Well,
comments?
one reason I asked one question is because we had a customer that we're doing some extra metering on, trying to figure out some way of saving money, and this would sound like it would have accommodated that without that extra charge for the metering.
That is correct, yes. Also, we've also talked about innovative rate structures for our customers, residential on up. You would need the information that this system collects to do accurately build a time of use rate for your customers. Peak pricing, there's like 4 or 5 different ones, Mike,
There's
if you want
several
to
different types
touch
of
on
designs.
those a little bit, but time of use is the one that everybody's pretty familiar with, and I think we have had that discussion in the past that we're at least interested in maybe offering that. But in order to offer that and do a good job of building that rate, you need the information that this produces to accurately do that, to make sure you're doing it right.
I also think that, our younger customers especially are used to looking at their usage online, bill pays online. They're all online looking at their accounts. And so I think that's something that's coming. We're going to have to keep our eye on. This also, we talked about the water to come along with this as well. So it's not just the electric meters. We would be reading the water meters as well. So that's part of what we've been looking at is in the Itron system, so that we pull the water meters with us. So we're doing it all, not just the electric side.
Right.
So it wouldn't save us any money if we just did electric and then had to go out and read our water meters.
How, it sounds fine, Ray, but how does the water department, what position are they in that they can afford it or not?
Well, the water department is actually, financially, the water department is fine in dealing with moving in these types of programs. They would free up some, the guys actually, work together at the write around and the meter reads, so it would free up some of their time as well. So I think they're in a good position to come along with it.
The answer is go ahead and sign us up for next year.
Just to elaborate on that a little more, George, to specifically what you asked, currently, all of our water meters already are Itron adaptable. Every so many seconds, they do what they call bubble up. They just come to life and they spit out a number, and they're waiting for something to hear it to grab that number and bring it into the system. These meters that we're going to put in place will hear that read, and there's no extra cost to the water department to do this. They're just coming along for the ride. I am going to grab all those reads that these meters can hear and bring them right in across the electrical system. So there is no cost to the water department. It's already in place.
Okay, but, I mean, maybe this doesn't have anything to do with it, Joe, but they're having a hard time getting a lot of places, they're getting a hard time getting these readings out of the house.
Yes.
I mean, is this gonna be something that's gonna be
The only thing, and we've had that conversation already, when we first put the water meters in, they had a 60-watt output. And in order to pick them up with the little handheld with the antenna, we'd have to get right up close to the foundation to grab it. That was in the day that we walked to every house. Now we don't do that. We have a drive-by system currently with an antenna on top of the vehicle. We have no problem picking up water meters with that. Now, the electric meter that is on the house will pick up that water meter. It goes from the water meter right to the meter on the house, and then it takes those two reads and sends it to a master meter that then is hooked to the internet and then comes into City Hall. That's how it works.
Okay.
So,
So in other words, you wouldn't be going by, ride-by readings?
nope, that would be all done.
Eliminating your man on the road?
You eliminate all the manpower unless there's a problem that we have to go check.
Yeah.
Has there been any concern or talk about security of that network? If you're
Yeah,
looking
there,
at,
absolutely. And this system is as secure and meets all security requirements and exceeds what we would say is a good system. So we're not concerned about the security issue. They're very much aware of the concerns, but they've addressed those within both the metering technology plus the web portal that we maintain. We have firewalls and security protection on that as well. So we've done everything that makes financial sense to do to protect that data.
Is, just out of curiosity, and maybe just, like Target, I mean, they got hit by, all these scams that are out there
Right.
now. Who says, and I'm sure you probably addressed it already, who says that they can't go in and jimmy up these things to clear out your bill?
Where a customer could do that, and
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they can do anything nowadays, I mean.
yeah, you always wonder what's possible and what's feasible and what's, makes sense. As far as the information that I have, a customer would not have access to the meter, and so they wouldn't be able, from what I understand, to alter the programming within the meter. And then, we're collecting that data, and we're putting it into a secure system. We also have the ability, if there's an anomaly, like a customer, and we can put flags in the system so that if a customer, if a customer's bill varies by 25% of what's anticipated for that customer, you can get a flag that says, go back in and look at that one's manually look at that. So let's say you put a flag into the system, any customer's bill that's over a certain threshold, if it's more than a certain percentage of what's anticipated, it would be flagged. If that happens, you can generate a report, go back in, look at it, and see, is there an error from the standpoint of the metering technology, the billing software? Is there a potential that this was corrupted data? Was it caused by some hacking or something like that? And you can try and figure out, what happened that way. But to the best of my knowledge, I haven't heard of any. These systems are not brand new. They've been out there for a few years. And to the best of my knowledge, there's not been any issues of online hacking or anything like that. I can tell you that the NERC, which is the North American Electric Reliability Council, one of the biggest issues for utilities is cybersecurity in general. And that goes all the way from this type of metering technology to substations, to transmission lines, to generators, and they are some very serious protocols that have to be met for those systems to be used on a utility system. And so, as I said, to the best of my knowledge, there hasn't been a breach of this type of a system by anybody. And you know, quite frankly, for the average residential customer, it doesn't make a lot of sense to spend your time trying to, you know, jimmy your local electric meter more than it would today, where a customer might go out and do some things to try and steal electricity today. Whether they do it with one of these meters or they do it with an existing analog meter, it's still theft of service, and it still has all the criminal penalties out there. So,
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
you bet. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, obviously, if you ever have any questions about WPPI or wholesale power supply, you know how to get hold of us very easily through Ray or through Joe. And, you know, we've appreciated the relationship that we've had with Norway. You've been a member since 2006. For a number of years, Joe served on our executive committee and had a lot of input into some of these things, including this information technology strategy that we're continuing to roll out. So I appreciate the support we've gotten from Norway. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we get into our communications for the evening. We only have one item on communications. Resolution 2014-03, recognition of years of service as a member of the Jake McGinney Museum Board for Mr. Ed Jazanovich. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an honor and pleasure to have an opportunity to put forward a resolution of our support, I guess, or appreciation for Mr. Jazanovich. Come on up, Ed. For the years of service that you put on the museum board. We prepared a resolution for you this evening, and you want me to read that?
Yeah.
Okay. It says, whereas Ed Jazanovich has served the residents of the city of Norway as a member of the Jake McGinney Museum Board from 1997 to January 2014, and whereas Mr. Jazanovich gave freely and genuinely of his ability and knowledge to the operation of the Jake McGinney Museum Board, and whereas Mr. Jazanovich's expertise, patience, and dedication was instrumental in assisting with improvements and advancements to the Jake McGinney Museum, and whereas during his tenure, Mr. Jazanovich assisted and supported numerous projects and initiatives for the betterment of the community of the city of Norway while demonstrating passion and resolve for sound fiscal responsibility. Now therefore be it resolved that this council does hereby wish to extend its sincere thanks and appreciation to Mr. Jazanovich for his dedication and contributions to the city and community as chairman of the Jake McGinney Museum, and be it further resolved that this resolution be presented to Mr. Jazanovich on behalf of all Norway residents. Congratulations on a dedicated tenure and service in the Norway community.
Thank you. I humbly accept this resolution.
Great.
You're so kind and thoughtful to do this, and I accept it on behalf of our present board and all of the members who served on the board in the past years. Of course, our museum is a unified effort. It's an effort between the council and the members of the city of Norway, the citizens, especially those members who have contributed monetarily and have volunteered as a guide or doing physical work at the museum. You know, when we received that property from Dan Olson 12 years ago, it was in pretty rough shape. And without the cooperation of the city council and the city employees, it would never be where it is today, because there are certain things that our board could not afford and couldn't physically do. For example, we needed an access road. We needed sewer and water. We needed electricity. We needed cable. We had to have all the trees behind the farmhouse cut and trimmed. We had to have lights for the parking lot. And I could go on and on. And of course, that's been the role of the city council and the employees. And we certainly appreciate that. I'm glad that I have this opportunity to thank you people for doing that, because the museum would not be where it is today. And sure that the museum is going to prosper and be in good shape in years to come. So on behalf of all of the people who have worked on the board and worked at the museum, city council, we appreciate it. And I appreciate Joe over there because over the years, I don't even know if he knew me or not, but I've never called him that he failed to respond to my request. And I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And I hope it continues in the future. So thank you very much for this.
As a person who's been on the board, I would like to thank you myself, just for the time you put on there, and say it's gonna be a different meeting without you running it.
Well, you've been a wonderful ambassador and dedicated member of that committee, and I'll tell you, Joe was probably afraid of getting down to the principal's office. So, but I'm sure you taught the current members well, and we're gonna look forward to, you know, continued success with the museum, because it is a wonderful success in town.
I received a phone call today from a person in Palatine who received the Norway Current, and they read the article that was in the Current, and they said that we should be very proud in the city of Norway for the fine museum that you have, and I appreciate that phone call.
If you can hold a minute, Ed, I'll present you with the resolution here, but first we have to approve it.
Make a
So-
motion, we approve resolution 2014-3, recognizing the years of service of a member of the Cheekman Museum Board of Edward J.
Support.
Lewis.
Motion made by Dr. Hayes, supported by Lee. Roll call.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes. Ed, if you could come back up, I'll present this resolution to you right now.
Take it yours. Got your phone?
I'd like to thank you.
Jeremy, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Now, forward this lead to our board for your fine work. Thank you. Very humble.
Let Trish get a picture there, Ed.
Grab a picture.
Ed,
Hang on.
Trish is gonna take a picture.
We're gonna get a picture.
Thank you.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our business for this evening. Does anyone from the public wish to address the council? If you do, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes. Okay, Chris.
A couple meetings back, probably almost 3 months ago now, we approved a upgrade at the fire hall for the security system. Do we have a status update on that, if that's completed yet? And if not, when it will be completed?
Well, I don't know when it will be completed, but as far as where it's at right now, we've been going back and forth, trying to make sure that the system can actually be run at City Hall, that it can go over the internet. There has been quite a bit of delay in making sure that the computer side of that is going to work. So I think we're at the tail end of that at this point, but that's why it was delayed.
Okay, so we're hoping it's gonna be,
From what I understand, everything's fine and ready to go. It's just a matter of getting that final, yes, this will work.
okay. And I know in the executive memo, you talked about the snow issues and some of the complaints that citizens are having. And I kind of tend to agree that there really isn't much that we can do at this point, but, I mean, what can we say to the residents to kind of address some of those issues that are currently coming in?
Well, one thing I just want to say, and, you know, I'm going to try and touch on this a little bit in a newsletter that's coming out or in a bill stuffer, but the guys are doing everything they can. You know, they're in the plow truck. They either have to go down the road faster than they normally do just to get the snow up over the banks, or, I mean, you know, the snow is either getting carried along and then deposited at a higher rate into those driveways, which again, that's another complaint. You know, they're doing what they can. The only other thing we can do is go around to all the different streets and start removing snow. So, you know, we're struggling with it. there's no question. So I think patience is the biggest key, you know.
Snow-wise, this has kind of been an unusual year in the amount we have. We haven't seen these kind of snows in a while.
Well, and this is kind of a double hit, because not only are we struggling with the frequency and the amount of snow, but now with the cold weather, we've just been getting hit over the last few weeks, especially with the freeze, the water service calls freezing up. And so that's going to be something that's going to be with us for another couple months for sure. It might even get worse once the warms up and the frost actually gets driven down farther. That's a global issue around here. It's not just Norway, it's Iron Mountain, Kingsford. I think we heard Caspian, almost whole town of Caspian was froze. So, I mean, it's a big issue right now. So, if we can keep it from snowing, so we can at least address the water issues, you know, that's about where we're at. It is. This is the worst. The guys have seen it in 15, 20 years. So it's an unusual event. So patience, I think, is the biggest key.
That's all I have.
George?
A little bit to touch on Chris, I just come through Iron Mountain today, and I tell you, I'm kind of proud of Norway compared to what Iron Mountain's got up there. Even the main highways is right out on top of it, so I think Ray, our crews are doing a fabulous job in Norway, really and truthfully. I'd just like to, I don't want to repeat myself, and I don't want to I'd just like to repeat here a little bit on our hiring practices that we've been kind of, first of all, Doc, I wanted to thank you. You come up with a real good idea on that hiring practice and letting it go till the end of the year for your office.
Fiscal year.
I thought it was a very good idea on that, on your end there. And Joe, I see in the newsletter there that you hired a new girl, and we talked briefly on that. And, you know, and I talked to Joe about this. You know, we hired these younger people. We're getting experience with computers and all this. But we got to face the fact we can't get both ends. We can't get experienced people and people that are going to stay with our system, considering the wages that we're going to pay. So, I mean, when he hires this girl at maybe 22, 23, 24 years old, if we can't come up with wages, I mean, how long do you expect her to stick around? And the same thing with Mary and Ray when you hire office personnel. Sure. Is the council going to change their policies for hiring rather than the office or Joe look for older personnel to fit the system that we can afford? I think this is something that management is going to have to look at, and the council is going to have to look at. What side of this fence are we going to go on? We can't have our cake and eat it too. So I mean,
I'm no labor attorney, George, but I don't think I can ask that question legally.
you can't what, Ray?
I can't ask that question legally.
Well, you can't base your hiring on the age of the
So-
person. So to even look at older or younger, that really
Age
can't be
cannot be
considered.
a
So
situation that we're
who
going to.
determines then what you're going to hire or who you're going to hire?
Qualifications.
What else?
Qualifications. You put in what you need. You tell them this is what I need for an employee with these skills. If you have them, apply.
You do the,
So, I
you
mean,
put
then-
together a
I mean,
position.
But then, Jay, we're facing the fact, I mean, these people, you're lucky if you're gonna be here for 3 months.
I don't know about that, George.
So you got constant turnover, which Mary and Ray and the office faces continuously. I
That
mean,
was-
I can see both sides of this puzzle or this picture here. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So I mean, is labor gonna say, well, geez, you can't hire that person because she fits too well into what you want her to do here? First of all, you want her to stick around. That's your number one objective. Why are you gonna train a person that you know is gonna leave in a month?
With part-time people at the wages we're paying, it was understood that we were probably going to have more turnover. I know that was part of the reason why when, in the utility billing discussion, why we wanted to go to a full-time with that. was to keep somebody in that position who would stay in that position. But when we decided to go full-time, when the council did, it had been discussed that we understood there would be more turnover. You would have more turnover in those positions like Joe's office and other part-time positions. That was something that was understood going in.
That's all.
Lee?
Also an executive memorandum here. I noticed we finally got the report on the preliminary City of Norway mine inspection report. And looks pretty bleak with all the stuff that we have to do in there. I just wish we had gotten it a little earlier. I see it's dated October 10th. I don't know what the delay was, but it's also...
You wanted the map. I gave you the map.
I got the map, yeah.
Yeah,
But
but
the
that was,
full report.
that was a couple months ago. I put that.
Oh, I never got this full report on this one.
Yeah. That was
But
the one they checked.
we got our work cut out for us here.
Yeah,
There's a lot of real bad areas there, a couple camps in these mine pits, and
yeah.
I would think our liability is sky high on that.
How much of this, Ray, can I ask, is our responsibility? I mean, all this was done by the mining company, all
Yeah.
these pits and everything.
Fortunately, all of it. You know, according to the mine inspector, I mean, we have to work with him to try and do what we can, to, you know, to limit the liability or the exposure. But even though that they dumped all this on us for $1, you know, we have it now. So, I mean, that's part of the problem, and he is willing to work with us, but we
Well,
got some
if we
issues.
have to go around and repair or fix all these fences around these mines
Yeah, I
that
know.
this report says, you go up Norway Hill,
I know.
It's
I
gonna be
mean, there is
expensive.
miles of
It's-
fence up there around them pits.
Yeah, it's, and we're trying to do what we can, spread it out over a period of time that is reasonable, you know, because if we can't go in and, you see the report, you can't go in and do everything right away. There's some things we can do, but we're gonna have to, you know, we're gonna have to spread it out. One of the first things we're gonna have to do is put up signs and tell people, stay out. Because right now, people go in and out of those areas, and they're in a risky area, and we have to do something to notify them. I'm also working with the county brownfield. There was a designation a few years ago under the EPA for mine scar properties, so I'm gonna work on that. There's no money right now. That's one of the things, when I go to Washington, we talk about electrical issues, when I talk with our congressman, I'm gonna bring that, and I'm gonna show him, and I'm gonna say, hey, Norway, Nagani, Marquette County, Gilgibik, we're all in the same boat. And, you know, these communities received all these mining properties, and we're stuck with that liability. And so it would be nice for some kind of assistance. I mean, the Farm Bill comes out with all sorts of you know, assistance for, you know, not that farmers don't need it, but here we got mining from a mine industry that's gone, and we could use that, so.
Well, this is one of the things that I was gonna bring up ahead on my list, was if we can somehow convert these areas into recreational areas and get some recreational grants to assist in the fencing. I think that the future of Norway is gonna be more recreation with the new state park that's coming in, with all the assets that we have. And I think that these ought to be assets and not liabilities. I think we ought to look at them. There's lots of things that can be done up there. And just to put a fence around it and say you can't go near it isn't gonna be the answer, I don't think.
Yeah, and I don't
Strawberry
disagree.
Lake was a big negative for the community, and just by putting in a trail around it, you took an area that was a waste area and a taboo area, and now made it into something positive. And I think we can do that with the rest of the land that we own up on that hill. I think there's a tremendous potential there.
I don't disagree. The thing is that we're gonna have to work closely with the mine inspector. I mean, because he has that responsibility, just like the report shows. He went and did all the on-the-ground, you know, research on those properties, and so, you know, we need to take that scope down to the bare minimum and maybe be able to do what you're talking about, use the areas that can get out of his target. So that's one of the areas Joe and I are gonna work on closely with him, is try and, you know, narrow that scope down, what we can actually handle, which is, I think, what George was getting at. I mean, what can you really handle out of this, you know? Because if you just look at it as a whole, it's a daunting task. So we're
And
gonna-
I see there's a couple of them here, Ray, where they're not even sure where the shafts are yet,
Yeah,
on a couple of spots.
right. And there's some on private property that they're not done looking at either,
Yeah, I mean,
so.
okay, now, this was given to the city for $1, whatever it was, way back, what, the 40s? When did the city get all this?
No, that was,
Back in the 80s.
80s, yeah,
When, really?
yeah. It wasn't that long ago.
Is that when they went through on the hill? And put
Yep.
the water and sewer in on the hill, or sewer on the hill?
I think it was third ward, they went through and they redid all the flats on Third Ward.
I think you're right, Lee.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Lee is right, when that's when it was turned over.
Because, yeah, that was
Because
all
there was-
Kiwanis land on the hill, and the people were leasing that land,
I
Right.
think that was maybe in the mid-seventies, because I remember when I was,
mid-70s,
first came to
okay.
town, they were finishing up
Okay,
the survey
but
of
now,
Third Ward.
do we own the mineral rights to this, or is that a deal where Kiwanis Land Association still owns the
He
mineral
never
rights?
owned them.
Yeah, they keep those,
They do,
yeah, they kept those.
We got all the liability and not the mineral.
yeah.
Well, I would think that if they own the mineral rights, that they own the responsibility for fencing.
Yeah.
Not according to the mine inspector.
Well, I guess he's doing a heck of a job anyway.
Doc, you got a bridge you want to sell too?
Well, again, I'd like to see this turn into something positive and instead of just as a big headache and a negative thing. So I think we have to look at it at that perspective and look at getting grants rather than just throwing a bunch of money at it. Because no matter what fencing we put up, it isn't gonna last.
Okay, Lee, anything else?
No, that's all I have.
You know, the type of fences that they put up, all they did before, Ray, was just poles in the ground and put bobwire.
Yeah.
I doubt like heck if that would pass anything right now.
We talked about that.
Yeah, it has to be 5-strand barbed wire fencing, and in between the steel posts, T-posts, you have to put the wraps on so people can't open it up to crawl through. But yes, barbed wire is an option. Yes. So,
Dr. Hayes?
I was approached by a citizen, they thought it was illegal for us to charge extra on our utility billing or whatever billing if people use credit cards, and I just wondered, is that true? And if it is, then we need to change our practice so if somebody could find out whether it is illegal to charge extra for people who use credit cards or not. I don't know if
Mary, do
Jay-
you know anything about that?
At one point in time, some credit cards would allow you to charge like a flat fee, but Ray, do you remember, didn't the state actually pass something on that allowing that percentage?
I don't know, we're not doing,
I thought there was a law, there was a law that came out that allowed you to charge back the fees. That was something recent in the last year.
Everybody's
Right.
doing it.
Yeah.
Mary, we'll check into it, have a
Okay.
report for next meeting.
That was the, and I had several other questions that were already answered. We already discussed about the city taking over electric service for the citizens inside the city. We should be allowed to service our own customers.
I'm glad you brought that up, Doc. On that last deal here, Joe, is, on taking over that case that went to court. Did you read that in here? What would that do to our pump down on the Menominee River for Wisconsin, Michigan,
because-
Wisconsin Electric?
Because Ray sits on the Michigan Municipal Board, he would be more knowledgeable about the particular case. So, you know, if he wants to elaborate on it, he can probably do a better job than I can.
I'm pretty confident, very, very confident, that once a petition is made for service within your municipal boundary, that you will have those customers. We're pretty confident that any customer outside or any potential customer outside of your municipal boundaries would not be covered. So the
Yeah.
pump is down in township, and it would not be covered. So we couldn't petition without, we would have to have a friendly agreement with We Energies in order to get that.
I didn't, reading this article, I didn't take it that way, because it seemed like this town or village bought this piece of property to put a water tank and a generator station, the whole works on it. And there was a building on it. And the power company, another power company served that building.
Right.
Now, the ruling says that the town or person or town that bought it could not turn around and sell power to anybody else or include anybody else. But they did not have to, they could, what's called their own power, consume their own power
Self-serve.
in their buildings or whatever they were doing at that spot. That's the way I read it.
Well, that's what I read too, and I brought that up before the meeting.
The,
Ray,
the only thing, and Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not 100% sure, but I think the way it went down is it was between a municipality and a co-op, electric association. The co-op used to serve that property.
Right.
Everything was torn down, the co-op removed everything, and then the city bought it and put stuff on it and wanted to self-serve. And the co-op came back and said, no, because we used to serve that piece of property, we have the rights. And then in the court of law, they decided that no, they didn't. The difference here is we never served that pump. We Energies has always served that pump right from the beginning.
True, but that wasn't,
That wasn't their service territory when it was all farmland back 80 years ago or 100 years ago. Correct. It was our service territory. We served that area until the development came in along the river and that pump station.
but we used to serve on the other side of that, Joe.
Yes, you used to serve bombers.
And we used to,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, you used to. So, how all that went down and stuff, that was a long time ago. And maybe knowing these things, Ray can bring them up at his next meeting and run them by someone and get a better clarification.
Yeah, Doc was asking a question before the meeting started, and basically what has, we've kind of held back, especially on the areas west of town, or on our west side of town, because they wanted the appeals, these court cases, to go through to see how the courts were going to rule. They're starting to come to conclusion, so the Michigan Municipal Electric Association is now in a position, once they conclude some of these, that they're going to be able to advise us and help us to move forward. I mean, we're obviously going to go look at the west side of town, but the pump will be one that we look at and can look at, and there's might be others. It might be in the industrial area or some other areas that we want to take a look at. So, I mean, I know what you're saying. I think that
I think, Joe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, Ray, how much you were aware of this. The reason why Wisconsin Electric or We Energies or whoever at the time took that partial over was because whoever bought that and updated it, divided it and updated it, is they specified underground power, in which the city of Norway did not have or put in underground power at the time. That is why the power company took that, they put in underground power, and that's how they got that section over.
That's what I heard also, yes.
Right.
But the actual pump that serves the water for the irrigation system is a three-phase service.
Yeah.
And we did not have three-phase power down there, and still don't have it today down there available to serve it. I would have to build a three-phase power line down to it, which is entirely doable. So they have a three-phase line that goes right by it, jumps across right by the bridge there, so they just tapped off and fed it. So
What would it cost to build a three-phase line down there? Is it worth the?
I'm rebuilding the single-phase line down there because it's 1930s vintage poles and wire. So I'm in the process of moving into that area. That's in the big picture over the next year to 2 years to go into that area and do that. So to add 2 more wires is not a whole lot of expense, to answer your question, to put 3-phase down there. Another
George,
$15,000.
I'm going to petition, as we go along here, I'm going to petition for a number of these areas, and that'll be one of them, so we'll see how it shakes out.
No, I just found it real interesting reading it. That's the
Yeah.
first thing that, I'm glad Doc brought it up, because that was the first thing that
So, I
popped
don't
in
know,
my
how many
mind.
years, Ray, have we been talking about it? Probably at least 3 or 4, you know, so.
Anything else, Dr. Hayes?
No.
Okay, I have one thing to discuss this evening. At our December 30th work session, we had talked about the retirement plans that we have for the different groups and what we were going to do going forward with potentially closing groups, how we wanted to handle the retirement. And part of that discussion was, in that discussion, the council, at least informally, decided that we wanted to move forward with closing the MERS retirement group for the electric employees. Now, since then, Mr. Anderson has been in contact with them, and there's procedures we need to follow to begin that whole process. The first one we're doing tonight right now, because we have to discuss it at a public meeting, a regularly scheduled public meeting. So that right now, to meet that requirement, I want to just kind of go over it again, that as a city, we are looking at closing the MERS group for the new hires closing the group, period, to move new hires toward a defined contribution plan, not a defined benefit plan, and take them out of the MERS retirement system. In order to do that, we have, there's going to be a cost to doing it. The council's looked at that. Exactly, there's options we can pick as to how we want to proceed. We haven't decided that yet. That's going to be part of the future discussion as to which one the council really wants to go with. But to begin it, I just wanted to begin tonight with the discussion. We're having this discussion here. The next thing will be at the next meeting when we inform MERS.
It may or may not, they have to write a resolution. Once we give them the minutes which show the discussion, I can't guarantee they're gonna write the resolution in 2 weeks, so.
Well, okay.
As soon as they do that, we'll get it
The
back.
next step would be that they'll write a resolution that we need to look at and pass at that time.
Well, I'm opposed to going with this if it means increasing rates for customers myself. I know that's what we had agreed on at that meeting, but I never said anything, and the more I thought about it, I don't really want to see our rate go up just to close this group if there are other ways of meeting the specifications. You're talking about what asked me about some hybrid policy, so.
I talked to IBW about it as well. So, I mean, they're aware of it. We had the same conversation with both groups.
Personally, Dr. Hayes, I agree with you. If we have other options, I think we should be looking at going that way, not raising the rates. Like I say, I'm bringing this forward because that seemed to be the consensus of the council at that time. It's something we can continue to discuss, because there was no vote, so there's no formal decision made. But just so, if the council is still interested in moving that process forward, we have to do this tonight.
There are other options, but sooner or later, I've been here, 4 years, 5 years now, 4 years. We keep kicking the can down the road on our unfunded liability on pension. And what are we talking, $7.5 million unfunded liability? We gotta do something about it. We have lots of options to look at, but something has to be done about it. We cannot keep kicking this down the road, because it's not gonna get better on its own.
Any other?
I agree. I mean, if there's other options, Doc, fine. I'm going into this wide open. You know, I'm willing to listen to anything and anybody. But I also agree with Lee. I mean, everybody just keeps going blind to it and doesn't want to do nothing about it. And we're continuously going deeper and deeper in debt. Let's try to solve the problem here. Sure, it's going to cost money. It's going to cost the money no matter what we do. But sooner or later, it has to be done. I don't care to take the blame as well as anybody else on the council, but I'd at least like to take the credit for at least we're trying to do something to correct it. That's what I look at.
I agree. I mean, I think we definitely need to look at all the options that are out there. I'm not saying that we need to, this is the only option, we have to do this. If there are other viable options, that we should look at those before jumping into this, but so far this seems, unfortunately, it seems to make the most sense to get us out of the situation that we're in. But definitely open to seeing what other options we have.
You know, nobody's gonna be happy. I agree with Doug. Nobody's wants to raise, the electricity rates just to cover stuff that was done 20 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
But they got us into this problem. What, are we just gonna close our eyes and go blind to it and try to forget about it?
Well,
It certainly ain't gonna heal
We've got
itself.
several other unions to deal with, and you're just talking about one out of 4 unions or 3 unions. And if there's a good solution for one, there has to be a good solution for others. It's my understanding that the unions have to agree to it. If we do have this hybrid option that Mr. Anderson's talking about, before we can hire anybody full-time in the unions, we have to get some kind of an agreement established.
But didn't this option make more sense than the hybrid for electrical because we could afford to do this in electrical?
Well, the electric could only afford it by a 1 penny per kilowatt
Right.
raise.
But I mean, it was a better option than the hybrid that was,
It was the best option that was offered, that we looked at that time, that I could see, and the cheapest. And something that you could look 20 years down the road, or how many years was it? I don't think it was 20. Look down the road and say, okay, we're out of this problem. Now we can make a choice and do what we want.
15 years.
15 years, okay.
And if we don't go that route, it'll be 40 years down the road.
Okay. We've had the conversation, so we can now that step.
Now
of
we're
this is
legal.
met. Right, now
We're
that
doing the
that step
steps.
is met, now we can move to step 2. Joe, anything else?
No, everything's been talked about that I would have talked about. So
How's the water holding up?
we're doing fine. They're draining the reservoirs, so we're bringing our, water's coming in for the winter, so we're doing good.
Mary, any? Tricia? Jay?
No, I have nothing to add.
Great. Okay, we are not going into any closed session this evening, and with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Support.
Motion made by Chris, supported by George. Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.